And so once again, when it left Stormblood, it was setting up Shadowbringers to really knock it out. And the story is just unreal. I mean, that story, Leveling Up, is crazy good. And then they've coupled it with doing something very clever, and they've just totally taken us off the source.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Casually Hardcore, episode 33. Joining us, we have Az from HeelvsBabyface, taking time out of his day to come talk to us about the state of MMORPGs in 2019 and who knows what else. We have an outline. We might stick to the outline. I do want to say, thanks again, Az. Why don't you go ahead and take a second to introduce yourself a little bit to the workforce. Let people know where they can find you. Obviously, links will be in the description to everything that you're doing in this video below. But yeah, say hi and tell us, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, who are you?
Hi, I'm Az from HeelvsBabyface. I'm Aquarius. I like long walks on the beach and playing with orphans and stuff like that. But I've been doing YouTube for just over 7 years now. Dealing with MMORPGs, particularly World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, and then last year or so, somehow found myself branching out into gaming as general.
So what caused that whole branch out? Because I was watching actually a recent video of yours about that, and you were just talking about how you're really happy that your community really kind of responded to kind of your more newsy posts. I mean, the one thing that I think is just utterly fascinating about your channel is obviously your thumbnails. It's that it is a very unique thing, but when people are playing around with trying to come up with the most interesting thumbnails, you just have a whiteboard. What started the whole whiteboard craze? Because I go look back in your past now, obviously you've had various the crazy YouTube reaction, oh no, please click on this thumbnail.
Well, I class them as anti-thumbnails. Because if you look at thumbnails today, everyone looks the same. You couldn't tell anyone different. This channel's got the same thumbnails. That channel's got they all have the same procedure now. So everyone thinks, all right, if we do this and this and this, everyone will click because they'll think I'm either that or they gravitate towards this sort of stuff. And I'm kind of one of these obnoxious people that are just like, screw that, I don't want to play that game. That game's boring. So I created the anti-thumbnail. So I found in a video, I got myself this whiteboard to do a skit.
Yeah.
And people were saying, "Oh, we love the whiteboard." So I just said to myself, "Why don't I just turn the whiteboard into the thumbnails then?" And then I was talking to my YouTube manager. Mm-hmm. And they were just like, oh, we love your thumbnails. we just think they're brilliant. They're just like the complete reverse of what everyone's doing, which makes you stand out more than anyone else. I was kind of like, yeah.
It's absolutely true. That's the thing that it is supposed to be eye catching. And have you ever followed Norm Macdonald at all, as a comedian? So he did this one thing where he went and specifically bombed at a roast, and he did it because they told him to be shocking, and he's like, what's more shocking than just telling the most weakest jokes? And it was that contrast, and at the time people were really pissed, what is happening? But then you go watch that, my wife has just gone on this Norm Macdonald trip where you go watch it, and it's praised because all of a sudden people realize, oh, he does know he's telling bad jokes. It's not like these are his jokes, he's telling specifically targeted, and that became the contrast. And now in the grand scheme of it, it's different, and it makes that difference maker. Now, there's a lot. Go ahead, Az.
No, I was just going to say the best compliment I've ever received about the thumbnails was somebody was trying to be nasty to me, and I find things like this actually highly laughable. People think they're upsetting you by putting nasty things in the comment section, and in reality, you're just looking at them and laughing. And one person put, he doesn't even do, was it real thumbnails? And I thought that is the best compliment I've ever had. that is a true compliment, that right there. I wear it like a badge of honor.
So, like I said at the top of the show, we're going to be talking about a lot of things. I think Activision Blizzard, Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers are some very common threads that both of our channels share. So we're going to dive into that. But I do want to say at this time, you can also find our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. Links are all in the description below. If you missed our last show, we had Rick Caucus from Caucus HD talking about if you should return to Destiny 2. It was a fantastic podcast. Be sure to check that out. And we also want to thank our partnership with ExitLag. We have a link in the description below. It gets you 3 free days. If you use the code DOWORK and decide to use them, you get 20% off. So we thank them. And with the business all concluded, let's have some fun and let's dive in. I do want to. I have here on the outline kind of Warhammer 40K, but one of the things that literally is breaking as we were talking kind of in the pre-show is the Boycott Borderlands 3 Twitter movement. Do Twitter boycotts matter? Do they even work? And no. Have you followed why people are mad at Borderlands 3? Because I mean, literally just broke. I went and educated myself 5 minutes ago.
Yesterday, I was getting people tweeting me yesterday about this this business where they had sent people around to this guy's house, 2 private detectives. And it's the guy who's reading off a statement. And I'm probably going to sound really non-empathetic here. But when he said he invited these private detectives in and spoke to them, I thought, he's a bit of a Burke, isn't he? He's a bit silly. Hi, we're private detectives. We have no authority or power whatsoever. We'd like to come into your property and discuss everything that you know about Borderlands 3. So okay, come in. Let me tell you everything.
What's interesting about that is that, yeah, because they could easily say, he could say no. It's kind of curious, though, because, I don't know, the guy's name is Mateo or Matto or something like that. If you're sitting here and I don't know how old the guy is, and if you're just all of a sudden some people show up and they're, they're flashing, I'm assuming badges. Typically, you could see, who knows who they hired. There could be a level of intimidation, like, oh, it's better just to go along with this rather than to resist, because people lie, right? If you ever have owed anybody money, it's always interesting. Somebody calls and it's like, you owe us this money. It's like, do I? you kind of fight back, but they'll well,
my answer to that is, well, send me something through.
Right, send me a bill. But they're people get trained on how to kind of get around this kind of things. But the other thing is that they shut down his Discord. They had him and they did a DMCA on his YouTube channel. They've done, and they filed it with Discord and had it shut down.
Did that? It was
Take-Two or 2K. Yeah, and so, but it's still these private eyes, I doubt they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. But it's overall, that in and of itself is just why I think, and somebody listed off in a tweet, here's the aliens, Colonel Marines, as a reason, they should boycott Borderlands 3. And it's I thought that was kind of a weak connection. Okay, move along.
I've spoken about this so many times in the last 8 or 9 months on my channel, the Streisand effect.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just another prime example of that. How on earth do you think, in a day and age like today, where you have YouTubers, streamers, social media, Twitch, whatever else, AOL, and
got those discs,
and you think you're going to send 2 private dicks around to somebody's house and say, tell us all about this information which we actually accidentally put on public display, and not think that this was going to get out there almost immediately, which then causes the Streisand effect. It actually does exactly what they don't want, which is more eyes on this, more information about this. And now they are looking ridiculous. They're looking complete and absolute fools.
How is that not known in this age, right? Because it seems that at least happens a couple times a year.
Because we have suits. That's why. Because we have suits who are running these companies who aren't gamers, who aren't on social media who aren't adept at this sort of thing. All they're interested in is coming in and working out how they make money. That's their jobs. They're too busy to do crap like we're doing. They're too busy to be tweeting and twitching and stuff like that. And so they live in a completely different world. And so when they think, this will be a good thing, we'll try and find out some information. Mm-hmm. They're not thinking about the repercussions. They're thinking about, well, logistically, they're going to go around, they're going to find out how they did this, that, and the other, and then they'll come back and they will present the information for us, and we will determine a course of action. Meanwhile, while they're going through all of that, 6,000 videos on YouTube have been made, 100,000 tweets have been made, hashtag boycott Borderlands 3 is going out there.
Trending.
Turn around and go, how did that happen?
So on that though, like it's so fascinating when you look at it, because you talk about the YouTube videos, you talk about all of that in today's society. It seems like there is this mindset, because obviously, like, where it's the game publishers versus YouTube. We've seen it with like EA and with Anthem this year, like just like a lot of people kind of getting around it. And they did two things that were really fascinating at the start of this year. They had all this hype build up for Anthem, which just fell through, and then they secretly ninja launched like Apex Legends to away. Is there such a thing as bad press? Because that's a general idea that there's no such thing as bad press. But when you look at with the kind of how YouTube and social media happen, I'm sure you've been accused of it. We get accused of, like being negative YouTubers, despite like just a ratio to positive and negative content is like less than like a percentage of a percent. But like I do believe. I mean, there's no such thing as bad press is an outdated concept. Because that concept itself was created in a day and age that doesn't have the social media reach that we've got today. You would have television, you'd have newspaper, you'd have radio. And so when that came out, by time shocking news of what Madonna did in 1982 had come out, this shocking news actually spoke to certain generations of people. So Madonna went on stage and acted provocatively in Provence, a strictly Catholic, something along those kind of lines. I'm using that as an example. And they would sensationalize this under that year's kind of ultra-conservative modicum. However, the youth were like, oh, this is amazing. She's expressing herself. She's doing whatever she wants. I can really relate to this woman, etc., etc. So there's no such thing as bad press kind of relates to that because it speaks to people. Whereas nowadays, you've got a bunch of idiots who are only concerned about making money, and they're not concerned about their audience. They're only concerned about the shareholder. The customer, who should be the first point of contact, is now the third point of contact because it's them, the product, the shareholder, then the customer. So they're so far down the line. We're not living in an age where we're shocked by particularly much because pretty much everything has been done now. And we're getting to an age where people have gone to such extremes, whether it's been on Big Brother, whether it's been on other TV programs, etc., that we feel as if the sensationalism is now fake. And a lot of the time is. Reality TV is ironically named because it's not even remotely reality anymore. My brother-in-law was on a reality show in Sweden, and he was saying, like, so it's a fun story. We all got to go to Sweden for it. But he was on a reality show in Sweden, and he came in second place. It was just like this, like just this random crazy story. But he was saying like everybody kept trying to get him to say something a certain way, like, would you say that it's like this? And he's like, no, I wouldn't say it like this, because he's not that kind of guy. But he was like, yeah, they're trying to spin that narrative. And so your point on reality TV, I even back when it was first coming out, like I was like, that's obviously where the eyes are, and that was a huge draw. But I think YouTube has surpassed the concept of what reality TV is. We just saw, Jake Paul getting married. I don't know if it's right or not. It just is just so fascinating because there is that sense that it is rewarded. Go ahead.
That's like a generation of YouTuber that they're like cocaine YouTubers. That's what I kind of call them, because they need the fix. They need to get that publicity, because they burst brightly, and then whatever fate, whatever outrage thing they did, dead bodies swinging from trees in Japan, whatever it may be, it dies too quickly now, because we live in a disposable world where everything is disposable. Mass shootings 2 days ago. It's old news now. It's sad to say, but it's kind of like already old news, and people are looking to digest the next thing. This is the same sort of concept with YouTubers. These YouTubers shine bright with a controversy, dim just as quickly. So they need to have the next explosion to keep it going. What did Jake Paul do? Whatever. I don't know which one's which, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
What did the Paul brother do when he came back from the Japan thing? Immediately electrocuted frogs, dead frogs, and pretended they were real to cause more controversy. Now he's marrying a surprise, same person, similar person in the similar environment, in the similar world. Of course, it's all fake and whatnot, and just done for
so we've seen that kind of problem within gaming. I want to also give Chris an opportunity, because it's just like, well, we've seen that same kind of
Let's talk about Warhammer.
I want to get to it. I will. I guarantee you, Warhammer. We're gonna talk about it. But we've seen that same kind of controversy this year alone in gaming. We had the whole like CNET piece targeting various angry,
but that failed.
Yeah. Oh, of course it did. It's just kind of the same, like you were saying. Like it's that only, like when you go look at the numbers, that only boosted everybody that was listed in that article's numbers, and it's like
because you could see exactly what that article was, which was contrived trash to try and smear YouTubers, whereas the true reality of the article was, advertisers, can you come to us please, because YouTubers are stealing all our ad revenue, because they're producing the content which people want to watch and we're not, because we're too busy screaming about orange people being bad. That's what the true article was about. So it's just a smear campaign in an effort to try and pull away advertisers. And it was as clear as glass. And so it died. Nobody gave a toss about it 12 hours later, because it was as clear as day. So all they did was amplify the examples. And as far as I'm aware, the examples that were used have received significant boosts in subscribers, in views, because people have, they understand what this kind of shill media is doing. And so if shill media has a go at somebody, I'm gutted I wasn't using an example.
We'll get you there.
Because
guys, go unsub right, from him. He's a
You're saying these people shouldn't be listened to? I want to hear what they got to say.
Yeah.
And
well, that's you brought up kind of a thing with Madonna, and you kind of touched on it, kind of the Catholic piece. That's one of the things that the church quickly learned with Gone with the Wind. It's like, okay, like we're gonna say don't go see this movie, #1 movie in the world at the time. Like within humans, like we were predisposed, like in some way, and I want to let Chris jump in to sit here and say, oh, I can't do something. I'm now going to go see that thing. I'm going to go read that book. I'm going to go. Screw you, I'm going to go do that, because you said I can't, or I'm not allowed to. Maybe it's a maturity thing. Maybe it's just a human evolution thing. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, you guys have hit on a lot of things.
One or two.
So to back up a little and kind of bring it all together, we're still talking about video games here. And a video game's core job is to entertain us. It's to give us a chance to escape from the bull crap that we're doing before we fire up that console, before we open up that game. And that's all it has to do. So all this press, all this cancel culture, we're happy to cancel a bad game. But at the end of the day, is it good? Like, if the game is good, none of this matters. If Borderlands 3 is incredible, none of this matters. None of this matters. Now, if Borderlands is bad, then we're like, well, we're going to boycott them because of that thing they did to that YouTuber. We won't even have to remember what it was. It just, that thing, well, that's why we did it. No, you just canceled a bad, like, I wasn't going to play it anyway, so it's easy to explain away why. That's it. It doesn't have to be any more complex than that. All this and cancel culture and stuff. Cancel culture is a very real thing. It can damage businesses that have real employees and all of that. But when it comes to gaming, is it good? And Apex is that perfect example. You talked about Anthem versus Apex. The community canceled Anthem because they were lied to, and they loved Apex. What is the difference? One was good. That's it. That's it. It wasn't the way they treated their employees. It wasn't the way they presented themselves in a press release. No Man's Sky wouldn't have been a problem had it been good. Like,
look what people tried to do with Cyberpunk 2077. They tried to latch onto the poster, the poster of the trans person, and they tried to turn that into a political storm. And it was a very actual clever niche poster that worked in the universe and actually worked, because I come from a sales marketing background before I ever went onto YouTube. From a sales marketing background, makes a whole lot of sense. It's got humor. It relates to the world. It's hitting a product. It's, the product is very much the focus of the advert, and it's a complete exaggeration if you saw what they were packing. So it was actually very clever marketing, how somebody probably would, a marketing company would actually operate in that day and age. But they were so desperate because of all the love that Cyberpunk was getting.
You want the tag. You want that whiteboard, that contrast to what everybody's thinking and feeling. All Cyberpunk has to do is come out and be an amazing game, and those things just look foolish, right?
But when you've got a company like CD Projekt Red that put out the first Witcher game, which was more of a cult classic, but went down a storm, that allowed the second Witcher game, and a complete evolution compared to how the first one played, become a massive success, which then led on to a much larger open world, Witcher 3, which garnered an even bigger audience. They've had hit after hit after hit. So there's no reason why gamers should doubt that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to fail. It's coming from a huge pedigree, and what we've seen so far is looking good. So the question I think that we should be asking is, why suddenly is the media trying to pull it down? What purpose do they have in attempting to pull it down? Is it because the average gamer, the people that they are constantly creating articles about, demonizing, targeting as toxic and all this kind of stuff, have nothing but love for this game because this is a company that's produced nothing but hits?
There's 3 wins there. So the first win is that there's no risk in this. So if the game's good, we will forget about those articles. Nobody's going to go back and bash them for being wrong. So there's no risk here. The second thing is that, what if they're right? If it ends up being a trash game, right? It ends up just shocking all of us and it's just garbage. They got to be the ones that called it, right? They got to be the ones who said, we knew that the morals of the dev team and the content that was being developed was trash. Ha ha, we were right the whole time. And they'll point back at their own articles.
Well, do you want to live in George Orwell's 1984?
I'm just telling you, there's no risk here. They can be right, or they can never have said anything at all. That's the beauty of today's media, is whatever you say is either right or never happened.
Let me post something rather interesting to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me post something rather interesting to you. What if what offends you doesn't offend me? Who's right?
HR teaches us that sexual harassment is in the eye of the beholder, and I assume offense is the same way. That if I'm offended, I'm entitled to that right, whether you intended it or not.
That's sexual harassment. We're talking about a video game. There's a piece of content in a video game which I'm not offended by, but you're offended by. Who's right? Who draws the line? Who says if it stays? Who says if it goes?
The money is the honest
developer. Answer. The developer says
well, yeah, they're the one who's making it.
So if there's enough of you to keep them in business and they like it, then they'll just carry on.
So right? if I want to make a joke at the expense of a cheeky joke at the expense of women, because this has been a hot topic.
Any group of people, sure.
What is actually wrong with that at the end of the day? Because if we say, no, you can't do that, it's sexist, it's whatever it may be, whatever istanism you want to attach to it, suddenly are you saying we cannot make jokes about this group of people? We cannot lampoon this group of people. We can't lampoon that group of people. We can't exaggerate these people or that person. When you get onto that sort of territory, you are starting to move into George Orwell's 1984, where we must have conformity of this, that, and the other.
It's a balance, right? So, like, on one hand, free speech is what protects us from Big Brother puppet state. Terrible, you know, you lose all individuality.
And what's going on Twitter right now? They're trying desperately hard to get rid of free speech. They're actually advocating for censorship.
Well, Twitter is a business. It doesn't have any allusion to.
I'm sorry,
but it doesn't have any allusion to. Right, but to it, like as far as that goes, it doesn't right now have it, and that's a really big, awesome conversation, because you have to say is Twitter, is Facebook, is social media more of a public square that should be protected by free speech, or is it now this business thing? And it's an evolving process, right? Because we are all voting with both our time and our attention, right? We're all three of us are on Twitter specifically, but as far as the public square, there is that oppression that people don't want to, you know, like people to be able to speak their mind. But then you also have to ask the intent. Was the intent to make a joke, or is the intent to offend so that you get clout? And that's really kind of where like when I look at it and how that question kind of is applied, is that, like, am I saying something ridiculous? Am I going to go out to Twitter and say a joke at the expense of gingers? I'll pick on myself. I say gingers are morons. And I'm doing that so that ideally, not because I think it's a funny joke or a funny statement, but because I think that people are going to get pissed about it. They're going to share it. They're going to retweet it. And then I grow in this concept of this internet clout for, like we talked about at the beginning, this small part of time. And then I have to find something else to get that hit of dopamine, to get that hit of, like, whether I'm back here masterminding it and whatever. Now, I think there's an interesting overall thought, especially around comedy, right? Because I've my bucket list is I want to go fail at stand-up. I say it like that because I love to just go, and if I suck at it, fine. But I'm working up the courage to finally go and do it. But beyond that, though, it's like in my mind, I'm like, who the hell would want to be a comedian in today's society? Because they, you know, it's dangerous. Like, you could sit here and, like, I'm going to make a joke. When can we rib on each other? And I think the ability for, like, you, me, or Chris to rib on each other is that we all know we learn each other. We have a kind of a relationship. But if all of a sudden I start just, like, randomly, like, I'm just going to make fun of gingers all day long, every day, ruthlessly, people are going to start it sets a different kind of tone. There's a different group who maybe there's an experience of being called soulless daywalkers, where they're just like, they're hurt, they're frustrated, and then they're going to vent about it. I think intent, and it's hard to judge intent. Go ahead, Az.
I was just going to say, but, you know, in all honesty, they are, though.
Yeah, we are daywalkers.
Censorship doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from the thought that, well, the majority of us all agree, so it must be right. So it comes from a morality. So
not in 2019.
So a lot of this censorship comes from people call for censorship because they assume that the censorship that will be put in place won't affect them, right?
No,
that guy to standards because he's being ridiculous. I'm fine. And where they struggle is that, well, long term, what if those values shift? What if you create a censorship machine and then one day you're the person being censored?
No, I think you've got it wrong here. I think it's the absolute minuscule minority that are screaming for censorship, but they have these platforms like Twitter, and Twitter is becoming so... Hi, people. We're talking about video games here on this podcast, just to let you know. It's great stuff. But it's just a minute fraction of people on Twitter that are getting their little bubbles together, and they're getting very vocal, and they're doing all of this attacking, and 99.99% of the regular person is just like, oh, what's going on here? You know, we don't care. Why was it fine to laugh at things 2 years ago that you can't laugh at now? 5 years ago that you can't laugh at now?
Well, I think it ties back to what you kind of said, where it gets picked up, it gets exaggerated, and then you kind of get on that loop again, and it's exhausting. I mean, like, just hands down, it's exhausting. I one video I made, it's like, I can't remember what I'm supposed to be mad at. Like, it's like, I just can't, like, it's just everything wants you to be mad because anger is such a natural human thing. And that's where you see a lot of that within even YouTubers. And we'll redirect it back into the kind of gaming specter off the CNET piece. It just, you see this concept that they're saying, like, they're advocating for. And I was like, I think that there's just like that market. If you think of it as a business in that regards, there's angry gamers out there. They're frustrated because of developers trying to literally, get into their pockets all the time. You got freaking Activision talking about it's not about making a fun game, it's about making money. You have those quotes like that kind of ring out. You see the things that you love, where like we had when we had Zeppelin talking about just how betrayed she feels with what they've done in World of Warcraft, but then at the same time, you're hurt because you have this love, this connection, this community that is so tied up with it. Gaming in and of itself is such it's kind of an emotion engine, and I've kind of called YouTube an emotion engine at the time. It's like you can have the best argument, but what's going to win is the most emotional argument, the most reactive to that, and that kind of ties into that concept of clickbait and that concept of what's shocking to get people to come watch and then be mad about, right? Like be mad at me with this, or be mad at me at this because I have this view. Either way's good.
Chris said a little earlier about, you go with the money. Mm-hmm. You go with what makes you money. And he's right. He's right with that. And you look at, for example, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has done insane amounts of cash. Insane.
Yeah, they have.
And they're now moving into the next phase. So they're coming out of this 10-year period where they built up all these characters. A lot of them have gone away, and they're trying to set up the new bunch of characters, which is going to, because they put up that horrible timeline, which just made me want to vomit in my mouth, because it just showed how soulless films and media is today. This is the timeline. In this date, we're going to release this film, and that date, this film. And then they're putting out the Black Widow film, which people have wanted for years. I love Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't believe. And so I've wanted this film for a long time. So you'd think we'll go with the money. Let's create a kick-ass spy film where she's awesome, kicks ass, saves the world, saves the day. So what do you get when they announce who's going to be directing it? Oh, well, I don't like weapons. I don't like violence. I don't even read comics. I'm not aware of these people. And I think this is a great platform for us to discuss social issues. And you're just like, are you as a supporter happy when you hear that?
If the movie's good, it doesn't matter though. Same concept with games.
No, but that's your sell. That's getting you. That's your bumming seat. That is your first reaction to it. No, you want somebody to come out and go, "Oh man, I have been a fan of Black Widow for donkey's years. She's got some great lore. She's got some great history behind her. Scarlett Johansson has been knocking it out the park for the last decade. She is gonna kick ass. She's going to take names. You're going to love this film. It's a prequel, so you're going to see the red hair back, whatever it may be, and you're going to get hyped. No, you got a social progressive now, and you got this running through the whole sphere.
But if it makes them money, though, are they wrong? Right? Because we can sit here and say like, oh, they're.
Are you going to go to the film based on? Let's say that is your sell. Are you going to go to the cinema based off that sell? Not go to the cinema because you like Black Widow.
The best thing about that question.
On the seat?
The best thing about that question is, am I going to go to the movies? I've got a baby number 4 on the way. I don't know what a movie is anymore, guys. Like if it's not on Netflix and it's not 10:30 at night, and I'm not trying to like hold on to some form of consciousness while having some slight entertainment after being yelled at by a 2-year-old all day, like what I don't know. If it gets me out of the house and I can have a babysitter, I'll go sit at any seat.
Get to a funeral.
Chris, what you got any thoughts? Because I want to talk more about World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, and some Warhammer.
No, I mean, I think at the end of the day, businesses stay in business. They make money to stay in business. Businesses are in business to stay in business.
Yeah, they don't care.
All they are. And
we want them to care, but they don't
have morality. The people that work there have morality, but the business itself does not have a sense of morals. The business itself does not have a sense of care. All it wants to do is continue being a business and living. And so when we talk about bad press, good press, there is a balance sheet, and that doesn't matter if it's our favorite developer. Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers still had a balance sheet. It still had a production schedule. It still had a delivery date. And what really matters is the end product. The end product is what we get to enjoy for hundreds, if not thousands of hours in gaming. And as long as the end product gets there, we as a community have shown that we will take just about any amount of abuse to devs. We will take just about any amount of miscommunication and mishandling of the marketing. We will take anything as long as the game is good.
So let's talk about some good games, because Shadowbringers is like literally one of the highest rated games, if not the highest rated games. Rare. I don't know. I say rare almost to the point of never heard of before. But Warhammer, like that's one of the things that I discovered.
You're talking about people that just want money. Oh my god!
So what got you into Warhammer as? And I want you guys to kind of touch on it, because Chris obviously has like I guess a partial army. I'm not. I've always just watched from the sidelines, just like, oh, that looks like a fun game. What got you into it, Az?
Well, just one day, one of my friends created a group chat on WhatsApp and just texted a bunch of us, and they're just like, "Look, guys, let's get a hobby. Let's get a hobby together. Let's do something together, which will get us, socially active. Getting us doing a little bit more together, something that we can put some time in or whatever." And he said, "I'm throwing out the idea of Warhammer, because I used to do Warhammer when I was a kid." Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like, I used to do a little bit of epic Warhammer, a little tiny.
Oh, I have some of those somewhere.
Yeah, back in, I don't know, when I was like 17, something like that. And I hadn't touched it since then. So I thought, okay, let's, so okay, I'm up for it. So a few of us actually said, yeah, right. So we just chose an army each. We just kind of like said, right, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? And thankfully, we're all like choosing different armies. And that's literally how it got going. It just got going through that. And I've got stuff all over the place. I got this boy I've just finished. God,
that's amazing.
You with your knight.
Boy.
You with your knight.
Oh, he's just cutting up stuff, So, we literally got through doing that. And I'm actually got a match this Sunday with my friend.
So Warhammer, guys, for anybody who isn't familiar with it, it's a miniature tabletop game. The original Warhammer game came out in like the 70s. It's been around a long time. It's gone through a lot of iterations. We played Warhammer 40,000 based on what you just showed us, which is set in the future. Came out a little later. I think StarCraft versus Warcraft. Typical guy is, yes, about this tall. His knight is one of the bigger guys. Epic, the game he talked about, is played with a much, these are ones still on sprue. They don't make these anymore, so I'm very careful about taking them on sprue. So they're very, very small. So Epic is a much more
wow, that's beautiful. You painted yourself and all that?
Yeah, all painted by moi.
I am also a Chaos player, which is exciting. I dabble across all of Chaos. There's a whole bunch of armies. What I love about Warhammer is they all have their own lore. The only problem with Warhammer is the people who make Warhammer. Like, Games Workshop is 100% of the problem with the hobby. Other than that, it's perfect.
I don't want to say anything in case on my second channel is going to start firing back up soon. So I don't want to say anything because I might try and tap them up for some sponsors.
All right, so that's fine.
So the individual employees and the people who've written the lore and the people who design the armies have such a passion for the game. It's wonderful. And I don't know where the disconnect is, because when you hear them talk on like their Warhammer TV or their podcasts, like I want to hang out with those guys. So I like them. And then I like going to the store. Typically, there's two parts to the hobby. So there's the game, and then there's what's called the hobby, which is what he's showing there, the painting and the building. And it's a very communal thing. Even if you're doing it in your own thing, like I'm painting here. My brother's painting out in West Texas. My other brother's painting down in Central Texas. And yet we have a text chat that's just like image after image after image of everything we're working on. That is fantastic. Do you play Sigmar too?
No, well, this one's, you can use this for 40K for Nurgle as well.
I'm
Okay.
glad you guys know. I'm just like, this is great.
So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful hobby. It's a great way to spend your time. It's incredibly expensive to get started. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
So make sure you tip to the channel, folks. Make sure you get these boys some coin.
If you're trying to start big, if you're not trying to start small, you should budget a comma in what you're getting started with.
The starter editions are pretty good though. The starter editions that they're bringing out now, you get a decent amount. Probably gets you around about 750, 1,000 points or so, maybe a little bit more.
$100. You got a third of what would be a tournament army, and you're in. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I spend an immense amount of time over a huge number of years. I come and go. I started in, I guess, middle school. Somebody invited me to their house, and they were all doing it. And like, I just walked in. It's like walking in on some kind of cult. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. And they took me to a store, and they said, just buy the coolest model. I just took like $20. Cool. And I bought a Chaos Dreadnought, which is a terrible model to start from a gameplay standpoint. You're not building towards anything. You don't have an HQ. You don't have troops. You have nothing. And I bought that, and I still have it around here somewhere. It's painted terribly. I have never stripped the paint. I have kept my original, maybe 13-year-old self's paint job on there. And getting back to it as an adult is a whole lot more fun because you have disposable income, unless you have 4 kids. And I can
what
stay
are you
up
talking about?
Hang out at funerals for fun.
So if they come out with a new box that's $100, that's an amount of money I can come up with, as opposed to when I was on my $5 every other week allowance. I was like, I'll never get there. So I love Warhammer. I just get frustrated sometimes with choices that the developer makes.
Are they worse than Wizards of the Coast, or on par or better? Because I've heard they're batshit.
So Wizards of the Coast, I hear, is really hard on their employees, but they put out a brilliant marketing strategy. I don't know if you listen to a lot of podcasts, but there's a podcast on the history of Wizards of the Coast and like how they basically looked at baseball cards and said, what's the math behind this? Like, how much do we release versus not release to make it an engaging hobby to collect while focusing on good gameplay? And like, they literally said, how do we make a game so fun we get rich in one conversation, and knocked it out of the park? And their investors were pissed because they said, no, this is a trend. Like, it came out, it got big around the same time as Beanie Babies and stuff. Yeah. This is a trend. You need to release so that we can capitalize, because at the end of this cycle, it's going to die. And they pulled back and they said, no, this is going to last 10 to 20 years. And the investors laughed at them, and they were like, no way. And it turns out if you dial it back enough and focus on the fun, you can have a steady paycheck from a passionate fan base forever and ever.
What a concept.
Magic still crushes it.
Let's talk about something we all love, and that's Shadowbringers. And it's not just us. Obviously, it looks like the world overall is in love with it. And that's really exciting, especially as a longtime Final Fantasy player, Final Fantasy XIV player. We're not going to talk spoilers. I would like to let just for anybody who's still, because if anybody just said, wow, Shadowbringers is amazing, let me go play it. It's like, yeah, you got a lot of game to catch up, and I would hate for somebody to be like, I'm listening to the game podcast, and all of a sudden it's like, can you believe ninjas raining from the sky? And that, like, whatever, that didn't happen. And so anyway, for anybody who might be concerned, we won't be talking story spoilers, but what was it about, or what is it about Shadowbringers that is so different in this day and age, in this year 2019, in contrast to obviously the other MMOs out there? You're obviously a WoW player, or was a WoW player, and then and we'll talk about WoW Classic in a second. But go ahead.
I think where Shadowbringers has to me personally succeeded is I think the greatest strength of Final Fantasy XIV is its storytelling. And when it went from A Realm Reborn into Heavensward, it really set up Heavensward massively with the cliffhangers, the reveals, and all this kind of stuff. So when we hit Heavensward, we had this unbelievable story that was being mapped out in front of us. When they left Heavensward to Stormblood, I unfortunately think they went a bit too samey, because they were in essence telling the same story again, but with different factions. You had the Almegans, the Ishgardians, you had the Garlean Empire, you had the Dragons. So they were kind of retelling the same story, but not quite as well. Then about halfway through Stormblood, the story suddenly kicked back off again massively. And we started to get other stuff with, because I'm trying not to give spoilers, with other aspects of the game, with the Ascians, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And so once again, when it left Stormblood, it was setting up Shadowbringers to really knock it out. And the story is just unreal. I mean, that story, Leveling Up, is crazy good. And then they've coupled it with doing something very clever, and they've just totally taken us off the source. Mm-hmm. So you have this very fresh feel for this expansion, because you've got a completely new world in the first. Mm-hmm. You've got this story which is now dropping end threads. These threads are getting tied, and we're getting some conclusions starting to come together.
Answers,
so we're getting payoff. We're getting character, some severe character progression, development. Your character is so intrinsic to all of this. You feel so woven into the narrative that you feel important. You feel the weight of these actions that you have to contend with. And then because the environment and everything is completely new, you do feel like a stranger in another land. Mm-hmm. Whereas we've had the familiar of Eorzea through 3 expansions now, even though we've opened up fresh areas. And so they've unbelievably managed to make the 3rd expansion make the game feel almost new again. To have this new feel and just been taken on a ride. I've been blown away by how good Shadowbringers has been so far.
So there's been a lot of talk about it. Chris, I want to let you jump in.
You would think that they're paying YouTubers to say all this positive stuff because there's just so much positive press.
Not a red cent. Not a red cent.
You would think that everybody here is just on some massive undisclosed payroll, because there is just so much positivity around there. I think it comes down to pacing. When you compare it to, let's say, the issues that BFA is having at its core, I think 8.2 is trying to turn it around. But if you compare it to BFA, there's 2 very distinct things going on here. And one company is saying, the experience is what matters, and that is all. And that sounds really logical. But the other side, WoW, is saying, how do we measure that? How do we objectively measure it? And they got themselves into a very YouTube way of looking at things, that watch time is good.
It's analytical. One's analytical, one is emotional.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I don't know how to handle opinion. I don't know how to be because I risk somebody not being in my shoes, right? Being the 14 side, what if they were wrong?
A plus B equals Y equals fun. That's what WoW's doing, and it's not working. And Yoshi P is doing human emotion, human engagement, human attachment, storytelling equals boom.
He's a conductor of an orchestra. I mean, this is art.
And they're using an equation.
Right. So WoW has gotten themselves in a point where by measuring number of active subscribers, number of players who engage with content, the amount of time they engage with content, that encourages content that has a lot of replayability built into it, to the point of fault. Like, you've got to do this loot grind system until your hands fall off. And that's what's been determined as measurable objective fun. And it has just, over Draenor, Legion, and BFA, has just slowly gotten to the point where it's unbearable. And then all of a sudden we're all quitting at once. And they're like, well, I don't understand. All of the metrics were at all-time highs. And Shadowbringers didn't do that. They said, you know what? I have a story to tell. I'm really passionate about it. I hope you like it. Obviously, every time they say this, they get overwhelmed and we end up with massive server queues. So they obviously don't think the amount of us will like it that do. They clearly think okay, a few people are going to like my story. Oh, everybody liked it.
I see that actually happen in business a lot. That's one of the things I've always kind of warned about. It's one of the really cool things about society today. When you talk about big data, I work as a software engineer. I deal with data all the time. And I see that sometimes you have more information than you've ever had, that you could, the people 10 years ago, 100 years ago would have murdered somebody just to have this information, because it allows you to make effective decisions. If you're actually interpreting the data correctly, you can have all the data points in the world and you can still come to the wrong conclusions. And I see it happen in business all the time. It takes effective leadership. This is a leadership problem that I see that's going on over at Activision Blizzard. It's a leadership problem that's been there for a long time. And as human beings who are mortal go and retire, and you see more of the kind of what I would say the Activision. I'm very angry at Activision. Just like
can I use a Star Trek analogy?
Please, I love Star Trek. My mom got me a Star Wars toaster. I love you, Mom. But I like Trek.
Trekkie. There is an episode of The Next Generation. There's about 2,000 people in chat now going, oh. There's an episode of The Next Generation where Data, the android, dates a woman. She's just come out of a relationship where her partner was very cold and detached. And she gets into a relationship with Data, who's, of course, not got any emotions. He's an android. So Data, he does all these programs and algorithms to make him act like a boyfriend, act as if he's attentive. Hi, honey, how is your day on shift? And all this kind of stuff. Why don't you just sit on down there and kick off your shoes and all that kind of stuff? And it was fake and it was false and you can't connect with it. And that is WoW. It's fake. It's a simulation of what they think should be fun. Whereas she ends up dumping Data because she needs a real human with real emotions that can get angry from time to time, that doesn't do everything for her all the time, that can be nice but she needs that human touch. And I think that's where Final Fantasy's winning people.
Does it come from fear? Does WoW do it because they now have something to lose? When they're the biggest, they're afraid to risk it all on telling something real?
And I just think it's personally, it's 15 years old. And I think they're just going with the flow. You know, this is what's worked for us. We know we're going to get X amount of people, probably. We can work out, because we have subscribers, how many subscribers we've got now, how long they're subscribed for, how much 6-monthers we've got here, 3-monthers, 1-monthers. Let's do a 6-month promotion, try and lock people in. We know we've got those down. And I think they're thinking about it in such this quantifiable, calculating way. Like, you put Ian Hazacostas on stage next to Yoshi P, right? You got Ian Hazacostas just doesn't look as if he has any interest in WoW. He just comes across as bored and dull. And when he's trying to sell the product, it's just like, and coming up in 8.2, there's no life, there's no soul behind the eyes, there's no passion whatsoever. But you got Yoshi P, and Yoshi P will quite happily turn around to his audience and say, hey, Yoshi, we want male bunnies in 5.1. And Yoshi just go, no. No. We're not doing it. We've got other stuff. No. And he'll quite happily say that, but you'll be like, all right, fair enough. But when he talks about what they're doing, you can see that there has been so much attention put in and care and thought. And, you know, there are things which I find out even now, because I've still got so much to learn about the game, but so much that I learned that these threads suddenly link back to something that happened in A Realm Reborn. And you're just like, oh my God, the thought process behind these things is insane. Absolutely.
I kind of speak to the kind of the passion, right? Because it's like, it's so true. When you talk about kind of an older property, like, are you interested in it? When I've worked on projects that go 2 or 3 years, it's like at that kind of that year 3, like, if you're not excited and passionate about it, it's very difficult to show up for work. It's very difficult to do that grind. And one of the things that's really just adamantly true about the game developers, and Phil Spencer said this, he's like, I could go tell like a game company, a studio, to go make X game, and it's going to end up being a crap game if they're not excited about making that game. You're talking about things and investments of time and people's attention that have to span years and years. Like the fact is that all of Shadowbringers has been mapped out. They did that August 2017. 6.0 is going to be mapped out. Obviously, like with the agile development and that kind of planning, like some of it's like, okay, and we would like to have this here, and that becomes more solid as time goes on. But they should have all of their plans for 6.0 usually completed around August this year, sometime this month. They're going to know what's going to happen, and that's kind of the beauty of what Yoshi P and the leadership has done. You can't manufacture passion. I can't go give you a pill. I can't give you a shot. I can't, I can't make you passionate about something that you're not. And so it's going to be an interesting thing to see what happens by the time we're talking 2025, because by the time 14 is going to be 15 years old here in about 4 years. Like it's relaunched as ARR, and it's 6 years old this year. But overall, when you talk 1.0 to whatever, you're talking about these are 15-year and more properties. Final Fantasy XI is an example. WoW is an example. These games, as long as people are willing to play and the developers are willing to invest, they'll live on forever and ever and ever. And ultimately, what's going to be interesting to see is there a way that if they're interested in, can Classic be what restores it? Can they go back a different path? Can they is it a sequel? Is it WoW 2? Is it Final Fantasy 14 2 or 17 or something that when technology's changed so much, because it's changed so much in 10 years, let alone 15, is there a time in which that we say, and now it's time to start again because it hasn't worked so far?
Well, WoW 2 should have been in development years ago.
I thought I thought Overwatch was that plan, but
well, no, that was going to be their next MMORPG, but it wasn't going to be World of Warcraft. It was going to be a
departure.
A departure from WoW, but it was going to be an MMORPG.
Something different enough, though, because I always kind of thought it has to be different. Yeah.
But you notice how even though 1.0 came out in 2010, they didn't, let 11 just rot and die.
Right.
They still said, right, we need to make the next Final Fantasy online game now. And I can almost see that happening here as well. I wouldn't be surprised in, let's say, 2022, for argument's sake, if they suddenly said, oh, wow, Final Fantasy 17 is going to be online. It's going to be Final Fantasy 17 online, and it will be the next generation of Final Fantasy online adventure. But with World of Warcraft, WoW 2 should have been in development 2010, 2012, roughly around in those years. And then this World of Warcraft probably should have come to an end around about 2015, 2016, maybe 17, but around about, let's say, the 17 mark, where it's turned about 12-ish years old, something like that. And then you've got this, this next generation with, the way that PC development has happened and all these other, because they seem to be very limited by the kind of technology that they do have. They can make things prettier and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to things like capacity and density and all this kind of stuff, they have massive problems. You can't get more than a few people together in WoW before.
A restart, though, also gives them the ability to set the base level at something that is like, okay, here's our minimum spec requirement, here's what it is, and it's so impactful. People like to always say PS3 limitations, but when you go looked at the PC specs, it was far worse than any PS3 out there. It was like Core 2 Duo. It was just that there were very and so and it's really awesome to see with 14 specifically that they're willing to let things go, where in 11's case, I think they might just have said no more PS2 in Japan, but even I'm not very versed on if it works in Japan, it doesn't work here. To be able to kind of continue that upgrade, it's there is always kind of that nice restarting point, because one of the problems that we see new people coming into 14 having is that, okay, you've got 300 hours of game before you get to Shadowbringers, and it's so good, and you want to play that 300 hours, but I hope that you have the time to do so, or you have to pay to jump. And we've kind of long thought that New Game Plus is going to be a really assistance tool to allow them to bundle in jump potions, so that with 6.0 and 7.0 and 8.0, how best get started now if you want to have any opportunity to play what comes next with this game.
That's because they're so protected on the story. The story is so in depth.
Yeah.
And the story is so well developed.
You wouldn't come into like, Breaking Bad season 5 and say, whatever the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do have it now that you just have to do the main story quest, and that will actually take you through the levels. So you don't have to, be concerned about side questing. And
it's still too long.
It is, but
and I watched Shadowbringers, so I skipped the majority of Stormblood. I skipped a big portion of Heavensward, and I skipped all of ARR. I was playing through that time, but just for gameplay, not for story. And Shadowbringers, Yoshi Peep came out with an interview that said Shadowbringers will be good enough that if you have been skipping it this whole time, you should still jump in, and it will not be so tied to past things that you'll feel lost. You will not have that Breaking Bad season 5 moment. And with the exception of kind of one moment in the story, I agree with him. So far, I have been 100%. Everything has been explained. Everything has been a previously on. I feel I've gotten to enjoy Shadowbringers, and that I have some questions about depth, but that means that you could start to include a jump potion to Shadowbringers and give people a good experience. The problem is right now, if you jump, there's no way to go back. So with New Game Plus, you're saying, hey, we'll give you. And then if you have questions, you can always go back and play it at your own pace. So I think the jump really frees them up to finally say, you know what, let's just close the chapter on ARR. It's optional content. It will always exist. If you want to go do it, go do it. We'll have old events. We'll have Yokai Watch or whatever pop up. You can go back into those zones and have a blast. But for the most part, let's kind of just call that a prequel to today, and that just needs to be retired content.
Well, that's the strength of them going to the first. Go ahead, Az.
No, I was just going to say, this will never happen, by the way, but it's just a nice thought. What if they released a film?
Oh, gosh. They're bringing a TV show together.
But what if they released an animated film that, let's say, for the next expansion, like you said, it's pretty much, Yoshi's pretty much going to have it nailed down within the next month or so as to where they're going to go with 6.0. Wouldn't it be incredible if they had an animated film, 90 minutes long, that just kind of went through the story up until the end of 5 point whatever it is, whatever it's going to be.
I think that would be a real strength. I think that's something that I hope they're having that conversation.
Somebody's probably started it as a fan thing. Somebody told me that it was that. Who was that? That was Scott saying that somebody tried a fan thing of creating an add-on that would do voiceover work for all of the quests for.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And then they never finished it because it was just too much work. So there is somebody out there could make a movie, an animated movie. I mean, there's a guy that has Final Fantasy, was it 1.0 or 11 that's running in Unity or something. So like people can do amazing things. It's just a question of like, will Square take it on? How long?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just a complete pie in the sky, but it's a beautiful idea to have.
It'd be wonderful.
I'll happily spend Square Enix's money. Yes, I agree. Make it, Square. Make it. Spend the money. I will buy it. With that, guys, like that is the show. There's a lot. We'll have to have you back on at some point. I'd love to get you back because there's just a lot. We didn't really tap into Classic. We didn't talk about WoW as much as I was thinking we would. Activision Blizzard.
Classic's less than 3 weeks.
Yeah, I know it's 3 weeks away, and it's an interesting concept. But before we wrap up the show, Az, do you have any final thoughts? Where can people find you? What do you have that you're working on that you want people to know about?
I'm just doing my due on YouTube, HeelvsBabyface. It's a wrestling reference before anyone asks what that means. Twitter at HeelvsBabyface. And I'm just there. I'm doing MMORPGs and I'm doing gaming news. And I'm a Yorkshireman, so I don't have a filter.
Chris, what are you working on? Where can people find us?
I'm working on a little Warhammer off time right here, and I've been finishing up some classes in 14, and I'm getting ready for WoW Classic. So I finished up the last of my live stuff, farmed up as many tokens as I'm going to farm up. I'm ready to let my live account it's active because it's getting me onto Classic, and that's about it. I'm just focused on MMOs and waiting for Brian to tell me if Destiny's worth picking up.
Honestly, I'm enjoying Destiny. I'm enjoying Final Fantasy XIV. I feel like I'm a kid in the candy store, and I wish I had more time because then we had Dragon Quest Builders 2, the Fire Emblem coming out on Switch, and I'm like, gosh, like I'll get to it. It's like, I feel like a country song get placed in my head. Like, I'm going to get there someday. It's like where I could just kick back and play these. Guys, join us next week where we have Datto from Datto Does Destiny coming on. We're going to be talking some more Destiny as we gear up for Shadowkeep. It's the year of Shadows, Shadowbringers, Shadowkeep. Destiny was recently delayed, so we'll talk to Datto about that. And they have cross save coming, so I think there's a lot to be excited about, despite the fact that as we open the show with all the drama, with all the issues that kind of plague within social media and everything like that, it can easily swallow you whole. But at the end of the day, like, games are, especially the good ones, like, they're fun, they bring people together, they create opportunities for interesting conversations. Guys, be sure to follow us here on YouTube. We have links in the description below for Twitch, Twitter, and Mixer. So this is the first podcast we're tossing up over on Mixer as well, and we actually have quite an audience over there. Hello, everybody on Mixer. I'm new. I don't know what we call ourselves. I guess streamers, I guess is an appropriate term. I keep saying mixers. Don't hate me.
Sounds alcoholic.
Yeah, mixers, absolutely. It's a nice ice cream social afternoon. With that, we're going to wrap up the podcast. Thanks everybody for hanging out. If Az wants to hang out for a little just Q&A with chat, we're game to do that for a little bit. But either way, thanks for tuning in for Work to Game. My name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
My name's Audrey.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a phenomenal day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Whoa, you guys are the best. Jorge, Kyle, Philip, 31 Edwards, Rock Druid, Corey Longwith, Aaron, Axis, Hambone, Lady Wild Plays, CN Navs, this is going too fast, Christopher, Phil, Shun, Dragons, Soul, Keen, Knights, Assassin, Carlos, Sherry, Robert, Leyland, Davon, Tim, Jojo World, Terrace, Sora, Scrublord, Trevor, Mill, Almond, 70s, Kimber, Tyler, oh my god, I'm so sorry, Cody, Legend, Carlos, Endless, Jonathan, Jade, Sai, Derek, Brandon, Aaron, Riku, Daryl, Chemistrol, Lauren, The Wolf, the Gar, Kelly, Anthony, Solid, John, Husky, oh my god, everybody, Dark Later, Christopher, Vestmans, John, Nopi, Brian, Tom, Dylan, Silent, whew, I missed your names. I'm sorry. I love you all. Oh my gosh, that was tough.